Hello. This will be kind of a mini lecture on an issue that confused a lot of my students last semester. So what we're going to talk about here are absolute, relative, and mixed cell references. So we've got a spreadsheet here. It's the earnings for a company for the past 5 years, and we're going to calculate their total earnings and then the total amount of sales tax that they have to pay to the state. So calculating the total is easy. All you have to do, highlight all of this, AutoSum, and boom, you have the total. And if you click on it, you can see the formula up here is pretty simple. Sum B5 to B16. And that's all right. And so then if we click and we drag this over, what happens? Well, what you would expect. We get the totals for the other 4 years. The reason this works is because Excel automatically changes the column as we drag it across. We're copying the formula across, but the column is changing each time. And so these are the most common cell references. These are relative cell references. If you just have something like B5 or D4, that is a relative cell reference. And what relative means is when you copy it across, when you copy a formula containing a relative cell reference, the cell moves in the direction of the copy. So, now let's look at the sales tax. It's a pretty simple formula. And by the way, if you're lost from how we got here, just look at the slides and familiarize yourself with how formulas work, how summation works, and then come back and we'll talk about relative versus absolute cell references. So here we're going to write a sales tax formula, and it's pretty simple. You just multiply the total amount of earnings for the year by the sales tax rate. So the total amount of earnings for the year is in B17. The sales tax rate is in A2. And you get the correct sales tax. But now look at what happens when you copy this across. It turns to 0. Why is it turned to 0? Well, because as we copied it across, that reference to A2 moved in the direction of the copy. And in this case, that was wrong. We only have one cell that has the sales tax. Sales tax didn't change from year to year or anything like that. It's just one constant number for the sales tax. So this didn't work. So let's delete that. So what we need to do here is we need to say, okay, no, don't change A2. Don't move that cell reference in the direction of the copy. To do that, we make it absolute. $A, $2. That is an absolute cell reference. So relative cell reference is something like B17. An absolute cell reference is something like $A, $2. It has two $signs, one in front of the column, one in front of the row. So now when I copy this formula over, it does what I want. B17 changes to C17, but A2 doesn't change to B2. And so now we've got now what we wanted to happen happened. So that leaves mixed cell references. What are mixed cell references? Well, a mixed cell reference is a cell reference that is partially relative and partially absolute. So they come into play in a few kind of corner cases, which we'll talk about. So a mixed cell reference has $1 sign in it. It has a dollar sign either in front of the column or in front of the row. In this case, we could change this absolute reference to A2 to a mixed reference to A2 with the dollar sign in front of the A. So that would mean absolute column, relative row. And the reason is, we're not changing the row. We're keeping the row the same. We're not copying it from one row to another, we're just copying it from one column to another. So it doesn't matter whether the row is relative or absolute. All that matters is that the column is absolute. So now let's look at another case. What if we had two sales taxes? What if we had one sales tax for the state and one sales tax for the municipality? So we'll change this to sales tax rate, and we'll move this over here. We'll say this is the state and this is local. And let's say that the municipality puts an extra 1% on the sales tax. So then we change this row right here to state sales tax, and this to local sales tax. So now what we want to have is we want to have one formula here that we can then copy across and fill in all 10 of these calculations here. All 5 state sales tax, all 5 local sales tax. Well, we've already got the state sales tax down. So let's see what happens though when we copy it over from one row to another. Well, there's a number here. It's not 0, but it's not the right number. What this is calculating is 1% of the state sales tax. We want it to be 1% of the total here. So the problem is the mixed cell reference did fine. $B2 changed to $B3, which is right because we went from the state to the local. We do want that cell to move in the direction of the copy when we copy from one row to another. We don't want it to move when we copy from one column to another, but when we copy from one row to another, we want it to move because there is a row below this, which is the local sales tax, and we want it automatically to pick that up. So, but the problem here is that this B18 changed to B19, and we didn't want that. Now, we can't make B18 absolute because we do want it changed to C18, D18, E18. So it needs to be mixed. So what we can do here is we can put a dollar sign in front of the row. So now we have $18 times $B2. So when we copy this formula over, this cell will change when we copy from one column to another, but won't change when we copy from one row to another. And that's what we want, because the total is in all 5 of these columns, but there's only one total row. So when we move down from the state sales tax to the local sales tax, we want the formula to keep using this row. We don't want it to move down just because we copied a row down. We want it to stay on this row. So that's why the dollar sign's in front of the 18. It's in front of the row because there's only one row for total. And now let's look at this one, $B2. In this case, we want the column to stay the same because there's only one column of sales tax. But the row 2 doesn't have a dollar sign in front of it because when we copy from one row to another, when we copy one row down from state to local, we do want it to move from the state row here to the local row here. So now let's copy this formula and see if it works. Well, that worked because that was right before and it didn't change. Now let's copy down one row. Lo and behold, that works too. So when we move down a row, B2 changes to B3, but B18 stays the same. And when we move right a column, B2 stays the same, but B18 changes to C18. And so that's what we wanted in this case. So these are two mixed cell references. This one is mixed with a relative column and an absolute row. This one is mixed with an absolute column and a relative row. So I hope that clarifies what absolute, relative, and mixed cell references are. Take a look at this. It's a pretty good spreadsheet for a lot of kind of basic Excel stuff. I'll post this completed spreadsheet online so that you have it to play around with if you want. Good luck on the exam, and the next lecture I post will be about Microsoft Access. It'll be a little longer than this one because I have a lot to say about Microsoft Access. Microsoft Access is probably the hardest portion of the class as far as Office products go. Not because it's really inherently hard, but just because you've probably seen PowerPoint and Excel before, but you may not have seen Access. So, again, good luck on the Excel exam, and I will talk to you later. Feel free to ask questions about this on IRC or email me if you must, but I prefer if you ask on IRC so that other people can see the answers. Alright, thank you. Bye.